Hey, what is up guys, GuitarRock here, welcome back to another reverse 1999 video. Now with version 1.4 right around the corner, I'm extremely excited for all the upcoming updates coming alongside with it. Now there's plenty of updates that they've announced on their official Twitter page, as you guys can see, alongside with increasing the level cap for the raw jukebox. And also, the total length of the version 1.4 will be lasting for 49 days, which is kind of insane if you ask me. So let's talk about the two new characters that are coming in version 1.4, and that's going to be 37 and 6. In this particular video, I'll be focusing more on 37, give you guys a better idea on whether or not you should be pulling for her and how you want to approach in building her. Now before we begin today's video, big shout out to Reverse 1999 for sponsoring this video. I'll be doing a showcase for both 37 and 6 in a separate video, so stay tuned for that. So let's jump right into it. Now let's first talk a little bit more about 37. What is her role ideally in a team? Now she's going to fit the role of much more of a semi-DPS or a support because of her ability to basically give everybody buffs in her own way, right? The game actually categorizes her as a DPS, follow-up attack, and support. But ideally, she fits in the role similar to, I would say, Pickles or Regulus, where she can be somewhat of a both, but I would say she's leaning towards the semi-DPS support role because she doesn't really do damage on her main ultimate skill. So let's talk about what she does. Now 37 is going to be a Star Afflatus character. That means she's going to compete with, I would say she somewhat competes with Regulus in that role, but we're going to jump more right into it in terms of the differences and also where does she fit in the overall meta. Now first things first, like I mentioned, she can't really be a main DPS due to the nature of her ultimate skill. As you can see, her ultimate skill gives buffs to everyone, alright? Mass buff grants 2 stack of numeral perception to all allies, gains 2 stack of enlightenment, and gains Eureka +2. Now that's a lot of things, alright? So 2 of each of these things, right? Now let's first talk about numeral perception and enlightenment, which is categorized right here. Numeral perception is an attack buff that everybody gets in the team. Alright, everyone's gonna get attack plus 10%, which is a decent chunk, alright? It's somewhat of a decent buff, but it doesn't really... 10% is not like super amazing or anything. But where it becomes crazy is the enlightenment here. The incantation's additional genesis damage dealt plus 100%. Alright, that is going to be where it gets really crazy. And also the last thing is about the Eureka +2. Now let's talk a little bit more about what is this Eureka +2. Now if you look at her insight, she's a character that basically does calculation of genesis, and she basically relies on Eureka to basically release an AoE attack throughout the entire enemy. So on her insight 1, after using an incantation, any of her skills, she will gain Eureka +1. After another ally takes an extra action, she will get another Eureka +1. Now once she reaches 5 Eureka, she will be able to consume 5 Eureka to cast this thing called Supplementary Formula. Now this attack is regarded as a follow-up attack, does not grant any Eureka. Now this is where her main source of damage comes from, alright? Is while she doesn't have an ultimate that does damage, Supplementary Formula is going to be pretty much like a replacement to her ultimate. So you can see what this does is it's going to perform a mass attack and it's going to deal 120% mental damage plus, you know, attack multiplied by 40% genesis damage to all enemies. Now, let's give you guys a scenario on how you want to benefit from her in the battle. So as you can see right now, I have 4 Eureka bars. I need 1 more Eureka bar to be able to cast my supplementary formula, which is the AoE damage, right? So you can see right here, this is going to be one of my skills right here, my skill card. You can ideally do something like this, alright? Ideally for her, you want to prevent from doing something like this and combining her card. Alright, the reason why is because for her, every single action that she takes is going to count towards this Eureka bar. So instead of combining her cards into one, you want to like use it separately, preferably something like this and then something like this, so that she gets 2 Eureka bar. So you can see right here, if I activate the first one, she's going to activate the AoE afterwards. And then remember, with extra actions from your ally, preferably something like Lilia. Lilia's this particular skill is going to be able to give extra action. This one is going to be very good. So Lilia, for the time being, is going to be the best pair with her. There's not much character that can perform extra actions for the time being besides Lilia. There's Carla Bauna and also I believe Miss New Mabel on her ultimate, right? So let's see if this is going to give us 1 more stack. So by default, after I do this, I'm going to basically activate my ultimate skill, and then I have that to get 1 more bar, and then if I activate Lilia's skill, I have 2 more bars into the next one. So boom. So now I'm going to activate this particular thing. You can see it's an AoE. So that's going to give me one more bar. Let's see. Lilia. Okay, I was able to activate the extra action, so therefore I get 2 more bar. So it's all about stacking this Eureka. So every time she reaches 5 bar, she will be able to get the always constantly cast the AoE skill. This is how you want to use her. She is quite AP heavy because of that as well. So right now, the ultimate, remember the ultimate is going to give you 2 Eureka right here, plus 2. This is for portrait zeros. We're going to talk about her portraits later on. So this is going to give me 2, and then I just need to activate one more skill to get 1 more, right? So ideally, that's how you want to go about it. So remember, this particular skill of hers does not, do any damage. All it does is it gives buffs. So right there you can see everybody gets that buff, but man, that is actually a lot of damage, alright? If you think about it, that particular skill, it does quite a lot of bonus damage due to the additional Genesis as well built into it. Which, if you guys are not aware already, Genesis damage basically ignores defense, right? So enemy with high defense, basically, she is going to be very, very effective against. Now looking at her remaining insight, her insight 2 is going to give her critical damage of 15%. Alright, so she's going to have increased critical damage of 15%. And the insight 3 is where it gets super crazy. So if you actually pull for her, you have to get her to insight 3. Now this is going to be insane. So when she enters battle, she immediately gets 20% extra crit rate. And also now, her Genesis damage through incantations can crit. This is going to be game changing. She's the first character, I believe, that is able to do that. Basically, Genesis damage that can crit. Now, Genesis damage being able to crit is extremely broken due to the nature that Genesis damage is pretty much a true damage. So basically, having the ability to crit right there is just bonkers. So ideally, man, that alone basically puts her on the radar, comparable to a lot of other top tier characters, right? So this particular skill is a single target. It does a normal mental damage and then additional Genesis damage right here. Alright, so as you can see, scaling is not too bad. It goes up to 350 and 100%. And then on this particular other skill, this one is a mass attack. It hits 2 targets, alright, again, same concept. Mental damage and then additional Genesis damage, as you can see. And then this one can apply sturdiness. So sturdiness basically increase damage resistance by 25%. So it's going to make you somewhat, not get one-shotted by some of the bosses. Now, let's talk about her portraits. This is going to be very, very important. Now, I do think that 37's portrait is going to modify her to be a beast, to be a monster of a damage dealer. Now, let's talk about why. Alright, first up, portrait 1, 40%. What is this? So this thing is going to improve upon her insight 3. Alright, if you guys are not aware, when she enters battles, she gets 20% critical rate. Now, that is going to increase to 40% if you have portrait 1. Again, if you have her at portrait 1, she's going to be way easier to build. 40% critical rate is insane. Alright, you plus a couple more stats from your side cube and then your resonance, you're going to get like 60 to 70% crit rate easily. Now portrait 2 is where she gets super crazy. Now this is going to modify her damage a little bit of her supplementary formula, the thing that once you get 5 Eureka stacks, you unleash the damage. Instead of 120%, 40% right here, you can see portrait 1 will be able to increase it to 180% and 60%. Way more damage. Portrait 4 increase that to 240% and 80%. Now portrait 3 and portrait 5, this is where I do think that portrait 3 does change her to be quite a significant of a beast. Now this thing is where it improves upon her condition right here of this particular thing. Again, I'm going to put the English skill translation. Now you get 2 stacks of everything, right? Numeral perception, enlightenment, and also Eureka plus 2. Now instead, you are going to be able to increase a portrait 3 is going to be increased to Eureka plus 3, enlightenment plus 3. Again, crazy stuff right there. But moving into the portrait 5, now you're going to be able to increase your Eureka plus 4. Alright, it literally doubles your Eureka. So every time you use ultimate, you are able to get Eureka plus 4, and then you can use one more skill to straight up just cast the mass attack. It is mind-blowing. I think if you have her portrait, at least portrait 3 or portrait 5, it changes her from a, like somewhat of a support semi-DPS to like a main DPS, because every 2 or 3 rounds you will be able to cast literally her supplementary formula, which is just mind-blowing. A lot of damage can go into her. So for sure, if you can afford to go portrait 3, go for it. She's going to be a beast. Now what about her side cube and what's the best way to build her if you do pull for 37? So in version 1.4, there's going to be a exclusive event that you can obtain, a version 1.4 exclusive side cube, which is going to be this particular one right here. So this is going to be a very good one for her. Now this will increase her damage dealt by 12%, very good, and the wearer's extra action genesis damage is going to be increased by 10%, which is extremely bonkers for 37 because she's one of the few characters that can do genesis damage. Now if you don't have this particular one, obviously the next best one is going to be Thundering Applause, because this is going to give a bunch of crit rate, right? So hopefully this one, you know, is going to be the second best for the time being. Now as for Resonance, very straightforward. Just give her those L cubes because those are going to give her the most crit rate and crit damage. Alright, if you can, try to stack as much crit rate and crit damage because she's a character that will be able to benefit from the crit. Now let's talk about teams. How do you want to put her in a team, ideally moving forward? If you are building her, you're going to need a healer with her, right? So obviously for that particular slot, you can either put something like 2 Fairy, going to be the best one. If you have 2 Fairy, I think she's the best pair alongside with 37. If you don't have 2 Fairy, you either need Medicine Pocket or Balloon Party, some sort of healer to try to protect her because she can be quite squishy. Now as for Lilia's slot, if you don't have her, you can probably put Regulus, Voyager, those are going to be a very good candidate. I would say Regulus is a pretty good candidate because she's not as AP heavy, so it does complement 37 pretty well, so she can basically hog all the action points all by herself. Now if you don't have Regulus, alright, you can consider something like Pickles. Even Shaman is going to be pretty decent as well, alright, fits into this team perfectly well, or even Alan Lee as well. Those are going to be the, you know, better characters to pair her with. Now it does depend on what role that you're trying to set her up as. Now in version 1.6, once Junang Z comes, you will be able to pair 37 with her and they are going to fit extremely well together. So that's going to be something that at least for my plan, I do intend to get both of them. Very solid character, future proofing yourself moving forward. Now overall, I think 37 has an insane pull value, and especially if you're willing to go for portraits, she's going to be even more valuable with that. But for me personally, I'm going to get at least 1 copy once she comes to global. She brings a lot of new stuff to the table. Being able to basically crit on genesis damage is going to be very unique. I think that's something that's extremely solid and cannot be replaced. Now I definitely recommend, if you guys can afford to, definitely get her. She's a very solid character moving forward. Now, with that being said, I'm going to feature 6 in the next video, so make sure you guys stay tuned on that. Alright, so that's going to be it for this video. Big shout out to Reverse1999 for sponsoring this particular video. As always, if you guys haven't already subscribed, give this video a like and let me know what you guys think of 37. Have a nice day. Goodbye.